Air raid sirens sound in the Ukrainian capital Kiev as the President Volodymyr Zelensky says a full-scale Russian invasion is underway. Zelensky said his country was being attacked and urged people not to panic as reports of explosions came in from cities across Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has tried to justify the decision to send in troops by saying it is a life-and-death decision for the future of Russia. But the attack on his neighbor has drawn international outrage. Russia has launched a military assault on Ukraine, hitting targets across the country. U.S. President Joe Biden has condemned the attack as unjustified and unprovoked. Here in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz said it was a terrible day for Ukraine and a dark day for Europe. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the move in an unscheduled television address shortly before 6 a.m. Moscow time. He warned the world that any attempt to interfere would lead to, quote, consequences you've never seen. Within minutes, explosions were reported in cities around Ukraine, including Odessa, Kharkiv, Kramatorsk, Mariupol, and Kiev. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky said it was a full-scale invasion and that Russia was attacking military infrastructure throughout the country and border guards. He used urged citizens not to panic and told them to stay indoors. Our political correspondent Thomas Sparrow is with me here in the studio. Thomas, talk us through what we know so far.
Well, very tense moments in Ukraine, very tense moments as well in Europe. Some of the images that we are just seeing there on the screen, that we've just seen there on the screen, although they are unverified, they are reportedly of attacks that are happening in the eastern part of Ukraine in particular. Some experts and some analysts mentioning that it could be military targets in particular that have been first targeted by this attack. But it's still all very unclear in general. Very unclear on the one hand about what is happening in the eastern part of Ukraine. Also very unclear as to what the motivations are behind this and what the reaction will be. So it's all very much developing, both on the ground with those images that we see, but also with the political reaction that we'll hear from European capitals and also from Washington. What's going to happen now from a political perspective is, first, a lot of very stark reactions, very deep warnings. We've seen that already from some of the political leaders calling it a dark hour for Europe, one of the most difficult moments since World War II. And then what steps can be taken beyond those words? One step that is expected by analysts is further sanctions towards Russia that could hit the financial infrastructure, even more related to Russia's energy sector. Also, when it comes to banking, the SWIFT mechanism, it will be important to see what they agree, these leaders, when they meet, for example, under the G7 format or under the sort of a NATO meeting or even a European Union leader meeting. So this is what we'll see coming up next, a political reaction which has come after these images that we're seeing that I must stress are still unverified. Okay, so we of course are expecting severe sanctions to be imposed on Russia as a result of this attack on Ukraine. We were just looking at some pictures there of some smoke rising above a city. Of course, these are unconfirmed reports, but we're hearing reports of fighting around the country. Stay with us, Thomas. We're going to cross now to our correspondent in Brussels, I'm told. We have Alexander van Namen, who is standing by as we wait for that address from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. So what can we expect, Alexandra, from this speech? How is Europe going to react?
Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, will be, I think, the first senior figure to address reporters live this morning. And in a statement issued earlier today, she already made clear that the European Union is going to impose massive and severe sanctions in response to what the European Union is describing as an unprecedented and unprovoked military aggression by Russia. And we know that the European Commission has been working on those sanctions for a while. Now we saw the European Union imposing the first tranche of sanctions already on Tuesday, but it was clear that they are prepared to impose more sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. And now I guess we are going to hear from Ursula von der Leyen more about that. And we are expecting the European Union to impose sanctions against whole sectors of Russia's industry, Russia's energy sector, sanctions against the Russian elite, Russian oligarchs. You just spoke with our colleague in the studio about the SWIFT system. That is also what is expected, that the Europeans, together with the US and with the UK, would move forward to cut off Russia from the electronic payments system, SWIFT.
Alexandra, you've been following this, of course, all along. The news, the announcement by Vladimir Putin that an attack on Ukraine was about to take place came through here just about 4.5 hours ago. I understand that Ursula von der Leyen is approaching the podium, is about to give her address. We're going to cut over straight now to that press conference.
Sovereign country. And once again, in the center of Europe, innocent women, men and children are dying of fear for their lives. We condemn this barbaric attack and the cynical arguments to justify it. It is President Putin who is bringing war back to Europe. And in these dark hours, the European Union and its people stand by Ukraine and its people. We are facing an unprecedented act of aggression by the Russian leadership against a sovereign, independent country. Russia's target is not only Donbas. The target is not only Ukraine. The target is the stability in Europe and the whole of the international peace order. And we will hold President Putin accountable for that. Later today, we will present a package of massive and targeted sanctions to European leaders for approval. With this package, we will target strategic sectors of the Russian economy by blocking their access to technologies and markets that are key for Russia. We will weaken Russia's economic base and its capacity to modernize. And in addition, we will freeze Russian assets in the European Union and stop the access of Russian banks to European financial markets. Like with the first package of sanctions, we are closely aligned with our partners and allies, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, but also, for example, Japan and Australia. These sanctions are designed to take a heavy toll on the Kremlin's interests and their ability to finance war. And we know that millions of Russians do not want war. President Putin is trying to turn the clock back to the times of the Russian Empire. But in doing so, he is putting at risk the future of the Russian people. I call on Russia to immediately stop the violence and to withdraw its troops from Ukraine's territory. We will not let President Putin tear down the security architecture that has given Europe peace and stability over many decades. We will not allow President Putin to replace the rule of law by the rule of force and ruthlessness. He should not underestimate the resolve and strength of our democracies. And history has proven that societies and alliances built on trust and freedom are resilient and successful. And that's exactly what the autocrats fear. The European Union stands with Ukraine and its people. We will continue to support them. Ukraine will prevail. Thank you.
These are among the darkest hours for Europe since the end of World War II. A major nuclear power has attacked a neighbor country and is threatening reprisals of any other state that may come to its rescue. This is not only the greatest violation of international law, it's a violation of the basic principles of human coexistence. It's costing many lives with unknown consequences ahead of us. The European Union will respond in the strongest possible terms. President of the European Council, President Michel, has called for a meeting of the European Council this evening, and they will agree and provide political guidance to adopt the stronger package, the harshest package of sanctions we have ever implemented. As High Representative for the Foreign Affairs and Security Policy of the European Union, I will be in touch with our partners around the world to ensure the international community will be fully grasping the gravity of the moment and to call strongly and united on Russia to cease immediately this behavior, intolerable behavior, and Russian leadership will face unprecedented isolation. This is not a question of blocs. This is not a question of diplomatic power games. It's a matter of life and death. It's about the future of our global community. And we will stand united with our transatlantic partners and with all European nations in defending this position. We stand united in saying that no violence and destruction as means to obtain political gains. We, the European Union, remain the stronger group of nations in the world, and this should not be underestimated. More immediately, we will be designing urgent assistance to Ukraine in this dire situation. We will also be active in supporting evacuation operations, including of our own staff in zones affected by this Russian attack. The European Union, together with transatlantic and like-minded partners, have made unprecedented efforts to achieve a diplomatic solution to the security crisis caused by Russia. But Russia has not reciprocated these efforts and instead has opted unilaterally for a grave and premeditated escalation, conducting to war. President Putin needs to stop this senseless aggression. And today our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine. We will stand with them.
And you have just been watching a live press conference from the European Union from Brussels there. We just heard from Josep Borrell. He is the European Union's chief diplomat, the foreign policy chief. And just before him, we also heard from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, saying that the European Union will hold Vladimir Putin accountable for this, what she described as an unprecedented act of aggression. Our Brussels bureau chief, Alexandra van Namen, is with us. Alexandra, what stood out in those speeches for you?
I think that listening to those statements make you once again understand the gravity of this moment. And we heard that Ursula von der Leyen was speaking about what is now the united European response. And of course, we can assume that those measures will be coordinated with the US, with the UK, with other partners. And she said that the European Union has already prepared sanctions that will be probably approved later today when the European leaders are coming together here in Brussels. And von der Leyen made clear that they are aiming at targeting strategically important sectors of Russia's industry, Russia's economy, that they are going to limit or to make it impossible for Russia to access the European capital and financial markets, and that they are also going to impose a ban on deliveries of important technology. And I think here we can expect them to ban the delivery of semiconductors, those important small chips that are not only in our iPhones, but that are also needed by Russia for its military.
Alexandra, I was struck by what Josep Borrell, the foreign policy chief for the European Union, also said about assisting with evacuations. There will be a lot of people leaving Ukraine, and not just people from the European Union. There has been talk of a possible wave of refugees. Is the European Union prepared for that?
I'm not sure whether we are, as a European Union, already prepared for that, but we do know that the neighboring countries, let's take Poland, for example, have been introducing measures to be prepared. We can expect, of course, a lot of people fleeing Ukraine, given the situation there. And Borrell was also talking about the isolation that Russia is going to be facing. I thought that was also very interesting, as well as what Ursula von der Leyen said about the European values, democracy, freedom, values that the European Union stands for, and values that they want to protect.
Alexandra, thank you for now. That was our Brussels Bureau Chief, Alexandra van Namen. And following that from Washington is our correspondent, Stefan Simons. Stefan, I'm sure you were just listening to that speech by that press conference, actually, by the European Union representatives, von der Leyen and Borrell. What did you make of what Ursula von der Leyen was saying about those sanctions? Are they being closely coordinated with what is happening in Washington? What are you hearing there?
Yeah, you can bet on it. That is what Ursula von der Leyen said is exactly what we will similarly hear tomorrow at 12 noon local time here in Washington, D.C. from President Biden. He will emphasize the same, make the same points, emphasize the same thing, that the United States will now throw really the gauntlet at Russia, making it impossible for Russia to access the international, not just the European, but the international financial market, really make target oligarchs and the inner circle, a wider inner circle of Vladimir Putin's, not just ministers or others who work with him and for him, but also the families and in a larger circle of all those who are in the periphery of Vladimir Putin. This will happen. Technology transfer, she mentioned. This is, of course, also big. Oil exports from Russia will be not happening, I assume. And there's many other things. The U.S. as well as the European Union, in strong and close coordination, have already in the drawer, basically, to pull out and to present tomorrow. And make no mistake, I think there's even then no end in sight if Russia is not in any way or form budging. That is, of course, let's remember that the sanctions and the talk of sanctions and the implementation of sanctions just a few days ago, that was a first step, and it should have deterred at least that was the hope, by the European Union and by the Americans and by President Biden to deter Russia from doing anything. That didn't work. So now that's punishment. Now is the sanctions will be a phase and enter a phase and used as a tool for punishment.
Stefan, thanks for now. Of course, it's just shy of 3 in the morning on the East Coast. The Americans will be waking up to this very soon. Stefan Simons, our correspondent in Washington, thank you very much. And just a reminder, you are watching special coverage from DW News live from Berlin. We're covering the Russian attack on Ukraine. Russia has indeed launched a military assault on Ukraine, hitting targets across the country. U.S. President Joe Biden has condemned the attack as unjustified and unprovoked. Here in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz said it was a terrible day for Ukraine and a dark day for Europe. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the move in an unscheduled television address shortly before 6 a.m. Moscow time. He warned the world that any attempt to interfere would lead to, quote, consequences you have never seen. Within minutes, explosions were reported in cities across Ukraine, including Odessa, Kharkiv, Kramatorsk, Mariupol, and Kiev. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky said it was a full-scale invasion and that Russia was attacking military infrastructure throughout the country, as well as border guards. He urged citizens not to panic and to stay indoors. Let's bring in DW correspondent Nick Connolly here. We have a team on the ground in Ukraine. Nick is part of that. He is in the northeast of the country. Nick, tell us where you are and what's happening around you.
We're traveling through Kharkiv Oblast, Kharkiv region, which is the last region before Donbas. If you look kind of west to east, Kharkiv is Ukraine's second biggest city. I was meant to be heading to Donbas today and left my train a bit earlier in a small town where the initial response was one of kind of dazed surprise and kind of shock. I remember just the first 2 hours as dawn came, people staring at their phones, discussing this, really incredulous that after all these months of build-up, this is now actually happening. You saw people in uniforms, people from fire brigade, other kind of government emergency services stocking up on coffee, cigarettes and sugar, getting in jeeps and trucks and heading east. A bit later, you saw ordinary residents kind of coming out, trying to withdraw cash from banks, huge queues outside the banks, same outside petrol stations looking for fuel. But no panic so far. People trying to make preparations, trying to get essential supplies, but people staying more or less calm, not raising voices, no conflict. I think this is a country that has seen warfare for the past 8 years in Donbas, and so people are, as best they can, be prepared, although this is obviously seemingly a Russian incursion on a scale quite unlike anything they've seen before.
Tell us more about that scale, Nick, because we're having a difficult time getting an idea of exactly what has been targeted and what the state of the development in this military exercise or this military attack is. We're looking at pictures right now of flames and smoke rising above what I'm told is a military airport. What do you know about what Russia is throwing at Ukraine right now?
Well, where I was, we heard kind of basically shockwaves, so probably artillery in the distance, and local residents told me they'd heard explosions early in the morning from what they thought was a nearby Ukrainian military airbase. They assumed those were Russian airstrikes or missile strikes. And we definitely have messages and reports of similar attacks on Ukrainian military infrastructure on airfields, even right in the west of the country in Ivano-Frankivsk, near the border with Poland. The rationale behind that is to stop Western countries from sending in supplies to reinforce the Ukrainian army with other countries. The really big difference this time is that it's not just restricted to the east. It seems like troops are also crossing in the north and also from Belarus and from the south, from Russia and ex-Crimea. So this is really a very difficult situation for Ukraine to deal with forces attacking on such a huge scale, on such a big front. All those attacks.
Okay. That was our correspondent Nick Connolly there in northeastern Ukraine. I was having some trouble hearing Nick. I don't know how that was for our viewers. I'm told we have our chief political editor. Anyway, thank you, Nick, if you can still hear me. Our chief political editor, Michaela Kufna, joins us now from our parliamentary studios here in Berlin. Michaela, I know you've been following this very closely. Tell us how Germany has been reacting to the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Well, shortly after the news came in that Russia is moving forward, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz issued a Twitter statement saying it was a dark day for Europe. We expect him to potentially speak later. We're expecting the foreign minister to speak in a short while. But the strongest statement we've heard so far is from Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck, who's also the Trade and Climate Minister. He's from the Green Party. And he went on breakfast television this morning initially to talk about generally energy security, but then described what Russia is doing as a war of aggression, I quote, a war of aggression on a sovereign state, and that this would change not just the peace order in Europe, but also relations in the West, transatlantic relations. He said that the West had been too naive, is what he used, and that would be including his own government. After all, Olaf Scholz only last week tried in what now seems like a last-ditch attempt to prevent Vladimir Putin from actually moving ahead, but it appears he'd taken this decision a very long time ago. At the same time, a great sense of shock here in Berlin.
Okay, Michaela, I'm just seeing coming across the top of my screen a flash note saying that the head of the German Foreign Affairs Committee in the Bundestag, the German parliament, has said that any future gas contracts with Russia would be, quote, inconceivable. Tell us more about how Germany is likely to respond to this in terms of sanctions together with its European partners.
Well, Germany also, in what is seen as a very dramatic move, particularly given the German domestic context of Olaf Scholz, pulled the plug on Nord Stream 2. That is the direct pipeline linking Germany and Russia. Russia supplies a huge chunk of the energy needs, particularly the gas needs of Germany, a significant chunk for Europe. So Germany and Europe is still highly energy dependent on Russia. Now, this announcement of no future contracts, in a sense, yes, that is a significant change in policy, but these are mostly long-term contracts. And the problem Europe is having with Russia right now is that Russia is going by the book. It's fulfilling its long-term commitments, but it's not going beyond.
Okay, Michaela, thank you so much for now. That was our chief political editor, Michaela Köfner.